Welcome, deep divers. Get ready for a truly unique journey today, one that really zeroes in on a single pivotal chapter in biblical history, Genesis chapter 26.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Now, if you've been with us before, you know we often tackle broad, sweeping topics, right? Pulling from stacks of diverse sources to give you that well-rounded understanding.
We do. We like to cover a lot of ground.
But this time, it's different. It's a focused spotlight, a singular deep dive into the adult life of Isaac, Abraham's son, inheritor of these profound world-changing promises.
In his story, it's kind of sandwiched between Abraham and Jacob, these really dynamic figures.
Exactly. So Isaac often gets viewed as quieter, maybe even a bit passive sometimes.
That's the common perception, yeah. But it's misleading.
Because as we're about to discover, Genesis 26 is anything but quiet. It's actually, well, it's a spiritual battleground, packed with unseen conflicts, profound insights, and some surprising lessons that really resonate with our lives today.
That's absolutely right. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack Genesis 26, not just as like a historical account, but as this really rich tapestry of meaning.
Okay.
We'll be extracting key insights on its historical and cultural context, peeling back the layers of its prophetic elements, especially those powerful messianic and eschatological forecasts, and diving deep into its rich allegories and typology.
And the spiritual battles, too, right? The unseen stuff.
Most importantly, yeah. We'll uncover the unseen spiritual battles that shaped Isaac's journey, drawing direct, illuminating parallels to our modern lives. Because you'll quickly discover, while the scenery changes, human nature, and indeed the nature of spiritual conflict, remains remarkably consistent across millennia.
I'm ready to unpack this, and I know you listening are too, so let's set the stage a bit. We find Isaac here as the patriarch. He's not the young man on Mount Moriah anymore.
No, he's matured. He's the head of the family now.
He's carrying the immense weight of the covenant promises and all the wealth inherited from his father, Abraham. He is that crucial, indispensable link connecting Abraham's legacy to Jacob's future and, ultimately to the entire lineage of Israel.
He really is that bridge generation.
And one of the most fascinating aspects of biblical narratives, what makes them so profoundly timeless, is how these familiar scenarios, these patterns, just keep reemerging. They're like echoes through history, aren't they?
Absolutely. You see it again and again.
We see good behaviors, bad behaviors, profound faith, debilitating fear, all playing out repeatedly, offering timeless lessons on human choices and their consequences. These lessons resonate deeply with our own experiences, or, those of the people we interact with daily. It shows us that what happens in ancient Geror has surprising relevance for our lives right now.
And what's truly fascinating here, and really foundational to understanding this chapter, is that biblical characters frequently serve as what we call types or shadows.
Okay, unpack that a little. Types and shadows.
Think of it as divine foreshadowing. An Old Testament person or an event or even an institution perfectly prefigures something in the New Testament, especially Christ himself.
Ah, okay, like a preview.
Exactly. And this chapter, Genesis 26, is particularly rich with such connections, making Isaac a powerful type of Christ in many ways. It's a valid illustration of the interplay between divine blessing and human conflict, between unwavering faith and crippling fear, and between truth and deception.
So it's not just an old story.
Not at all. These aren't just quaint ancient stories. They reflect profound spiritual realities, the unseen forces at play that were active then, shaping the destinies of patriarchs and continue to be active now, influencing our own choices and challenges.
So let's dive into the specifics then, starting with the historical and cultural landscape of Isaac's world. Who are the key players, and what are the crucial places in this ancient Near Eastern drama?
Right. Well, at the center, of course, are Isaac and Rebekah.
Okay.
Isaac, as we've noted, is now the covenant heir. Generally a man of faith, maybe quiet, contemplative.
Like human.
Oh, very human. Susceptible to very human frailties, just like us. And Rebekah, his wife, plays a clinical role. She's not just a character. She's a living symbol of the covenant's continuation.
And her beauty becomes a plot point, doesn't it? Almost immediately.
It does, interestingly. It triggers Isaac's fear-driven deception, revealing a pattern of human frailty that, well, surprisingly echoes his father's past mistakes. History repeating itself.
Yeah, that's striking. Then we have Abimelech, the king of Gerar, and his people, the Philistines. Tell us about Abimelech.
Okay, Abimelech. It's important to understand that Abimelech was likely a dynastic title, kind of like Pharaoh for the kings of Egypt.
Ah, so not necessarily the same guy Abraham met.
Probably not. This Abimelech might be a successor, maybe even a grandson, to the one Abraham encountered generations earlier. But what's striking is how he's portrayed. He acts with a surprisingly strong sense of moral righteousness, especially when contrasted with Isaac's initial deception.
That's the crazy part, isn't it? The pagan king seems to have a clearer ethical compass, at least in that moment, than the covenant heir.
It's a humbling moment in the text, definitely. It makes you think.
It really does.
Yeah.
And the Philistines themselves, who were they exactly?
The Philistines. They were a significant group, these sea peoples, who had settled along the Canaanite coast, especially in the fertile areas.
So they were established there.
Oh, yeah. They controlled vital resources, particularly access to water, which was huge, and trade routes. The Bible depicts them as both adversaries and neighbors. It's a complex relationship.
That's like it.
They embody the social and political tensions of the time. But beyond their historical reality, throughout Scripture and particularly in this chapter, they often become a recurring type, an illustrative representation of what we call the flesh.
Okay, the flesh. Let's clarify that for everyone listening. What do we mean by the flesh in this biblical context? It's not just our bodies, right?
No, not just physical bodies. When we talk about the flesh biblically, we're talking about our fallen human nature, that part of us that's inherently self-centered, driven by its own desires, appetites, and impulses, often in direct opposition to God's spirit.
The part that wants what it wants now.
Exactly. It seeks comfort, self-preservation, immediate gratification, wants what it wants, when it wants it, how it wants it. The Philistines, with their envy and their actions to hinder Isaac, well, they become a vivid illustration of this principle at play. They represent that internal struggle we all face, where our natural inclinations often pull us away from God's perfect will.
That makes it much clearer. It's that internal pull. And the geography here is equally significant, isn't it? Gur, this region in southwest Canaan, near the Philistine border, it feels like more than just a location.
It really functions as a geographical and spiritual borderland in the narrative. It's a place where blessing and conflict collide, where faith and compromise meet head-on, almost like a Tesla ground.
A proving ground.
Yeah. And Isaac's decision to move here, fleeing that devastating famine, actually mirrors Abraham's earlier experience, which just perfectly highlights those generational patterns we talked about, how both good and bad behaviors can echo down through family lines.
And later he moves to Beersheba.
Right. Later, Isaac moves to Beersheba, a really significant site for covenant and worship. It's where Abraham had made a treaty generations before, and Isaac settles there. Its very name, Well of the Oath, tells you a lot about its importance in the covenant story.
And we can't forget Esau in this chapter either, Isaac's son. His choices at the end seem important.
Very important. Esau's marriage choices at the chapter's end become a profound source of grief for Isaac and Rebekah. This isn't just a throwaway detail. It highlights the perennial challenges of cultural assimilation and specifically intermarriage with those outside the covenant community, in this case, the Hittites.
It caused real pain.
Deep pain. It underscores the importance of spiritual lineage and shared values, contrasting sharply with earthly preferences or superficial attractions. It's kind of a preview of the family struggles and the diverging paths that will define the next generation, Jacob versus Esau. A stark contrast to Abraham's meticulous efforts to find Isaac a wife from his own people, ensuring that covenant line.
Okay, so that sets the scene with the people and places. Now let's zoom out a bit and talk about life itself in this precarious land during Isaac's time. The chapter kicks off with a severe famine. That sounds intense.
Oh, it was. A crisis echoing a similar one in Abraham's time. In the ancient world, famine wasn't just, an economic downturn or a food shortage. It carried immense political and spiritual weight.
More than just hardship.
Much more. It was a profound spiritual testing, a moment of reckoning. It really hammers home the precarious nature of nomadic life and their absolute dependence on God's blessing for sheer survival in such an arid, unpredictable environment.
You really lived or died by the weather, by the resources.
Absolutely. Imagine their daily existence. Isaac's livelihood as a nomadic herdsman depended heavily on things we might take for granted: access to and control of water rights, peaceful relations with neighbors, and above all, divine favor. Without these, survival was almost impossible.
And his wealth is mentioned specifically.
Yes, his wealth, measured in large flocks of sheep and goats, great herds of cattle, and many servants, isn't just a sign of his success. It's a direct, tangible sign of God's blessing, a fulfillment of the promises made to Abraham. But As we'll see, it also, unfortunately, incites intense envy among those around him.
It attracts unwanted attention.
It's a classic human response, isn't it? Seeing someone else's success often stirs up envy.
And that leads us directly to the significance of wells. You mentioned water rights. Wells seem central here.
Absolutely crucial. In these arid regions, wells were literally the difference between life and death for a nomadic people and their herds. They meant survival, prosperity, even establishing land ownership.
So control over a well was control over life, basically.
Pretty much. Disputes over water rights were incredibly common and often led to serious conflict, sometimes even warfare. Isaac's persistent redigging and naming of wells Esek, Sitna, Rehoboth, it demonstrates his profound resilience, but also ultimately God's consistent provision, even when facing constant opposition.
So the wells are literal, but maybe more too.
Definitely more. They were literal sources of life, but metaphorically they represent something far deeper, something profoundly spiritual, as we'll get into.
Okay. And one more context point. Covenant practices.
Right. Covenants were formal agreements, often sealed by solemn oaths, maybe sacrifices, sometimes communal meals. They established mutual obligations and benefits between parties.
Like a sacred contract.
Exactly. God's relationship with his people, starting with Abraham, was often defined by such covenants. These weren't just legal contracts, they were sacred bonds, revealing God's faithfulness and his desire for a relationship with humanity. Understanding covenants helps us grasp the gravity of God's promises to Isaac right here in this chapter.
Okay, so we have this setting.
Yeah.
A severe famine, a real existential threat. It's driving Isaac from his home. And like his father Abraham before him, Isaac starts moving, thinking about going towards Egypt, which was kind of the usual refuge in times of famine, right?
It was the logical place, the place with the Nile, reliable water.
But here's where it gets really interesting. God steps in directly. He appears to Isaac and explicitly commands, do not go to Egypt.
Yes. This is a crucial distinction from Abraham's earlier action. Abraham did go to Egypt during a famine, and it led to, well, a lot of complications. Deception, danger.
Right. So this command, do not go to Egypt, feels significant. What's the deeper meaning there?
Oh, it carries immense allegorical and typological weight. Remember, we talked about typology, divine foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Well, throughout Scripture, Egypt is consistently presented as a type of sin, or maybe more broadly, a symbol of appeasing the flesh, of seeking worldly solutions and comfort in sin, rather than trusting in divine provision.
So going to Egypt would be like relying on human strength, worldly power, instead of God.
Precisely. It represents reliance on human ingenuity, on external powers, rather than God. So God's instruction to stay here in this land, even though it's famine-stricken, is a direct call for Isaac to trust his provision, his guidance, his protection, right where he is.
Even when it looks bleak.
Especially when it looks bleak. This initial divine interaction highlights a critical spiritual principle. God will appear during difficulty, during our times of famine, and even when he doesn't show up in a dramatic vision, the call is always to wait and trust on him.
Which is hard to do.
It's incredibly hard. It directly contrasts with human impatience or self-reliance. Think about Sarah's decision with Hagar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to force God's promise on her own terms.
Yeah, that didn't end well.
No. We often, in our times of personal or collective famine, hardship, uncertainty, we rush to find our own solutions, our own Egypts, our own quick fixes, rather than waiting on God's perfect timing and method.
That's a powerful point. It challenges our modern impulse for immediate action, doesn't it? Our need to fix things now. So God tells Isaac not to go to Egypt, and then what does he do? He lays out the promise again.
He does. He reiterates the Abrahamic covenant to Isaac, promising, I will be with you and bless you, to give all this land to you and your descendants, to cause descendants to be as numerous as the stars, and, crucially, through your descendants, all the nations of the earth will be blessed.
That last part,
Yeah.
That's huge. Not just for Isaac, but for everyone.
It truly is. This isn't just a reminder, it's a profound reaffirmation, sealing Isaac's place in the divine plan. And diving into the prophetic aspects, that promise, in your offspring, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, is not just a general statement of prosperity.
It's specific.
It's a direct, singular, messianic prophecy. It finds its ultimate climactic fulfillment in Jesus Christ, the singular seed or offspring of Abraham and Isaac, through whom salvation, blessing, reconciliation are offered universally to all mankind.
Wow. So Isaac's role here is critical for that line.
Absolutely. And Isaac himself, in his obedience to stay in Gerar despite the famine, despite the logical pull towards Egypt, mirrors Christ's perfect obedience to God's will. This obedience in Isaac's case literally ensured the preservation of that messianic line. It kept the covenant on track.
He had to be in the right place.
He had to stay in the right place in the right land for the covenant to continue unfolding towards its ultimate fulfillment in Jesus. It's a reminder of how seemingly small acts of obedience can have cosmic implications.
And you mentioned eschatological implications too. That's about the end times, right?
Right. Eschatology is the study of the end times, the ultimate destiny of everything according to divine revelation. The promise of owning the land of Canaan, though partially fulfilled in Israel's history, also foreshadows the ultimate inheritance of the earth by God's redeemed people under Christ's eternal reign.
A future fulfillment.
Exactly. It speaks to a future where God's promises are fully realized, not just geographically, but universally. And the growth of descendants as the stars of heaven points beyond physical Israel to a global, diverse multitude from every nation, tribe, and tongue who will worship God in the new heavens and new earth.
Like a restoration of Eden.
Precisely. Anticipating the global reign of Christ and the complete restoration of Edenic blessing, a radical reversal of the fall, where God dwells with humanity in a perfect harmony.
The theological insight woven through all this, for me, is just breathtaking. God blesses Isaac because Abraham obeyed. What does that tell us?
Yeah, this is a cornerstone of grace. It emphasizes a grace-based framework, not a performance-based one. God's faithfulness to his promise persists, even thrives, despite human weakness and failure.
So our blessing isn't just about us getting it right all the time.
No. It means that our blessing today, as believers, isn't solely dependent on our perfect obedience, but on God's unwavering faithfulness to his promises, and ultimately on Jesus, whose perfect obedience secures our blessing. God's promise is absolutely certain, even if the timeline takes centuries, like the land promise still unfolding.
That's reassuring.
It is. For us, this reminds us that God's promises are assured despite challenges, despite our own imperfections. And often, our human impatience can actually be the biggest enemy to waiting on God's perfect timing and method, like Sarah with Hagar. We want it now, on our schedule, but God operates on an eternal timetable, always working for a greater, more perfect outcome.
Okay, so after this incredible direct divine encounter, God has just appeared, given Isaac these amazing reassurances, reaffirmed the covenant, basically said, I've got your back, stay put. What does Isaac do almost immediately? It's kind of unbelievable.
It really is. He repeats Abraham's mistake. He feels for his life because Rebekah is beautiful and claims she is his sister.
It's almost a direct copy of his father's earlier sin in Egypt and Gerar. It just leaves you scratching your head, doesn't it? Like, did he forget already?
It truly does make you pause. And this is a powerful moment for spiritual and psychological analysis, offering deep insights into human nature. It shows just how deeply, how insidiously fear can undermine faith, even right after a direct word from God.
The fear just took over.
Completely. Despite God's very recent, very explicit reassurance, Isaac's fear for his life, that deep self-preservation instinct, just takes over. You can almost picture him doing the calculations in his own spirit, trying to manage the outcome, control his circumstances, instead of just trusting God's word.
That internal battle.
Exactly. It illustrates the intense internal mental and emotional battle between belief in God's power and protection versus the overwhelming fear of a perceived threat. And deception, as we see here, is clearly presented as a tool of Satan. It's a tactic that's always present, always available when people choose to trust in their own strategies rather than in God's protection.
And the fact that it's a repeated sin.
That highlights those generational patterns. We mentioned how both good and, unfortunately, bad behaviors, even subconscious fears, can carry forward through families, influencing the next generations. It even foreshadows the dysfunctions we'll see in Isaac's own sons, like Jacob's deception of Esau later on.
Wow, yeah.
It truly underscores universal human frailty and our tendency to revert to insecurity and seeking control, even after a powerful divine encounter. It's a stark reminder that even the most godly individuals are susceptible to fear and self-reliance.
But the deception doesn't last long, does it? Abimelech finds out.
No, it unravels. Abimelech, the king, actually discovers Isaac fondling or sporting with Rebekah. Some translations vary, but it's clearly showing intimacy that goes way beyond a brother-sister relationship.
Yeah, that's a giveaway.
Definitely.
Right.
He immediately realizes the truth, and his rebuke to Isaac is, frankly, astounding.
Uh-huh.
He says, "Why did you say she was your sister? Someone might have taken your wife and slept with her, and you would have made us guilty of great sin."
Again, the pagan king showing more moral clarity at that moment.
It truly shows a clearer sense of morality and justice in Abimelech than in Isaac, the man of God, the covenant heir, right then. It's a humbling mirror for us to hold up.
But Isaac confesses, right? He doesn't try to lie his way out further.
That's a small positive, yes. His confession, implied by Abimelech's public rebuke, rather than digging deeper lies, is a good step, even if the motive for the original lie was fear. But what's even more fascinating and crucial for our deep dive is what's happening behind the scenes spiritually.
The unseen battle.
Exactly. This isn't just a human drama, it's a profound act of spiritual warfare. Satan, the adversary, would have loved nothing more than for the messianic line to be discredited by sin, maybe by Rebekah being taken by another man, violating the purity of the line, or even by Isaac's premature death. That would have shattered the lineage.
But God protected them.
Absolutely. God's covenant protection is paramount. He preserved Isaac and Rebekah despite their failure. He even orchestrated events, turning Abimelech's heart, leading him to issue a powerful kingdom-wide decree. Anyone who harms this man or his wife will die.
Wow, so God used the king to protect his plan.
Precisely. This highlights God's direct sovereign intervention. He not only prevented Abimelech from sinning by taking Rebekah, but actively protected his chosen lineage, ensuring his promises would stand. For us today, this is incredibly relevant. Our integrity is constantly tested, and fear-driven compromises can, ironically, lead to far greater complications and dangers than the initial fear itself.
But God's grace is still there.
Profoundly. God's grace and protection are still evident even in our deepest shortcomings, always working behind the scenes to preserve his purpose.
Okay, so now, despite the famine, despite Isaac's deception and fear, despite all these human failings, God still blesses him.
Yeah.
Massively.
Tremendously. Isaac plants in the land of Gerar, and against all odds, in a famine-stricken area, the text says he reaps 100 times more grain than he planted. 100-fold return.
That's incredible blessing.
Incredible. The text emphasizes he became a rich man and his wealth only continued to grow, acquiring vast possessions and many servants. He becomes truly prosperous. But this prosperity doesn't bring peace, does it?
No, it seems to do the opposite. It incites intense, bitter envy among the Philistines. They just can't stand to see his success.
And here's where the Philistines truly step into their role as that type of the flesh we discussed earlier. Remember the flesh. Self-centered, driven by appetites.
Wants what it wants.
Exactly. Driven by self-interest, not wanting pain or suffering, always wanting what it wants when it wants it. Envy is not just a fleeting feeling. It is a consistent, destructive trait of the flesh.
And how does that envy manifest? What do they do?
The unseen battle becomes very visible. The Philistines react to Isaac's prosperity by actively filling all of Isaac's wells with earth wells that Abraham's servants had originally dug. They're literally destroying his access to life-sustaining water.
That's not just petty vandalism. That's an attack on his survival.
It's far more than an inconvenience. It is a direct, malicious attempt to slow down your blessing, to hurt you, hinder you, or to stop the blessing entirely, to cut off his livelihood and drive him out. It's sabotage.
And it feels like a striking modern parallel, too, when you experience success sometimes.
Absolutely. When you start walking in God's blessing, when you experience success, career, family, spiritual walk, it can provoke intense envy in others. And that envy often leads to destructive actions, whether it's saying the wrong things and doing the wrong things in relationships or actively trying to hinder someone's progress, their joy, or their peace. It's a sad reality of fallen human nature.
And Abimelech, the king, even though he protected Isaac earlier, now sees he's become too rich and powerful and asks him to leave.
Right. The blessing itself becomes a source of conflict. So Isaac, in what feels like a profound act of courageous passivity, moves to the Gerar Valley instead of fighting.
Which brings us back to the wells. This struggle over wells seems like a key allegory here. What's the symbolism?
The wells. They are so much more than just water sources in this narrative. They are potent symbols. They are sources of life, inheritance, and spiritual legacy. They represent access to the blessing and presence of God, spiritual nourishment, God's provision, and the very wellspring of life itself.
So stopping the wells is stopping more than just water.
Oh, much more. Satan's tactics, the unseen spiritual warfare, become symbolically clear. Stopping the wells is symbolic of the enemy's attempt to cut off spiritual life. It's a powerful allegory for Satan obstructing our inheritance or choking off our sources of spiritual life, our prayer life, our study of the Word, our fellowship with other believers.
It's the world trying to block the spiritual.
Exactly. It's the world or the worldly thought, the mindset of the flesh trying to pollute or destroy or fill or block that which is the use of the spiritual body within each and every individual. They don't just want the water. They want to stop the very source of life and blessing, to disconnect Isaac from the divine flow. Think of it like weeds choking out a precious plant. The opposition is trying to choke out the source of life.
But Isaac's response is where the real lessons shine through, isn't it? He doesn't just give up.
No, he persists. He reopened the wells his father had dug, and significantly, he used Abraham's original names for them. This isn't just about digging. It's a powerful act of spiritual reclamation and legacy.
He's reclaiming his inheritance.
Precisely. He's not just finding water, he's reclaiming his inheritance, asserting his right to the land in God's eyes, and honoring his father's faith. It's a powerful model for spiritual resilience and perseverance. It signifies a profound commitment not to let the world or the devil bury spiritual truths, not to let them stop the flow of God's blessing in his life or the lives of his descendants. It's not about fighting them physically, it's about persistent, quiet, faithful action. Keep digging.
And this journey of digging 3 specific wells, it feels like a progression.
It becomes a profound typological journey for the believer. First, there's Isaac. That name means contention. Isaac's shepherds dig a well, and the local shepherds immediately claim the water, leading to an argument.
Conflict right away.
Right away. This could represent the believer's early struggle for legitimacy, those initial disputes when you first start walking in faith and face pushback, arguments, or misunderstandings from those around you. It's the contention that arises simply because you're trying to live differently, tap into a different source.
Okay, so that's the first hurdle, the initial argument.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
They dig another well, and again, there's an immediate fight, a clear conflict over it. Isaac names this one Sitna.
And Sitna means?
Opposition or hostility. This represents the open opposition of the enemy, the clear, undeniable, often aggressive resistance you face as you continue to pursue God's path, as you seek spiritual growth, or as you try to bring God's life into a situation. It's the moment when the battle becomes undeniable and direct. The enemy isn't hiding anymore.
So we've had contention, then open hostility. It sounds discouraging. A lesser person might just give up at this point, pack it in.
Many would, but Isaac doesn't. He moves on again and digs a third well. And this time, beautifully, the text says, the local people finally left him alone.
Finally, peace.
Finally. Isaac names it Rehoboth, saying, at last the Lord has made room for us, and we will be able to thrive. Rehoboth means room enough or broad places. It signifies the peace and space found when one remains faithful. It shows the journey from contention and open opposition to a place of rest, prosperity, and unhindered blessing. It's the wide open spaces God provides when we persist in faith, a testament to his ultimate provision.
That's a beautiful picture.
It is. And this whole well motif also directly connects us forward to Jesus in John 4, offering living water, signifying salvation and a source of life that truly satisfies the soul's deepest thirst, a source beyond human ability to take away or dispute. Just as physical water was essential for life then, spiritual living water from Christ is essential for eternal life and thriving today.
It's incredible how this ancient narrative provides such a clear blueprint for protecting our spiritual resources and being resilient against opposition. This idea of courageous passivity, it's so counterintuitive, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're taught to stand our ground, fight for our rights.
We are. But Isaac chose to move and redig rather than retaliate. It teaches us patience and a peaceful demeanor, a courageous passivity that, rather than being weak, actually allows God the space to work and provide, instead of us fighting every battle ourselves, often just in our own limited strength.
Like knowing which battles to fight.
Exactly. Or rather, how to fight them sometimes by yielding ground physically to gain ground spiritually. It's like a wise gardener knowing when to prune and when to simply let the plant grow stronger roots. Isaac wasn't avoiding conflict out of fear this time. He was avoiding it out of faith, trusting God to make room for him.
And God did, at Rehoboth.
He did. And from Rehoboth, where he found his room enough, Isaac moves to Beersheba. And significantly, the Lord appears to him on the very night of his arrival.
Another divine encounter.
Yes. And God says, I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you and will bless you. This appearance is profoundly significant because it comes after that intense season of testing the wells, the conflict, the displacement. It marks Isaac's spiritual maturity. His faith is becoming truly personal now, not just something inherited from his father's stories. He's experienced God's faithfulness firsthand through the trials.
That's a powerful spiritual reflection. It shows us that this pattern trial, leading to revelation, leading to worship, that's the enduring journey of all maturing believers, isn't it?
It really is. It's a powerful reminder that God never left them. He remained present through all the difficulties, the heartaches, the frustrations. God's blessing doesn't mean an absence of difficulty. It means being under the observance and the care of God through it all, experiencing his presence even, maybe especially, in the valley of the shadow. It's a testament to his unwavering faithfulness.
And Isaac's response this time, no fear, no deception.
No, his response is immediate and heartfelt, truly exemplary. He immediately builds an altar and worships the Lord there at Beersheba. He sets up his camp, digs another well. This act of building an altar isn't just a historical detail. It's a crucial spiritual practice for us, too.
How so?
It's about building an altar in our heart and our mind to remember God's presence and faithfulness, especially in challenging times. When you face hardship, you can look back at these altars of remembrance, those specific moments where God showed up for you, and declare, God was with me then, he's with me now, and he will be with me always. It reinforces the reality of his active presence in our lives.
Okay, so Isaac's at Beersheba. He's worshipped. Things seem peaceful. But then King Abimelech shows up again.
He does, accompanied by his advisor, Ahuzah, and his army commander, Phul. They travel all the way from Gerar to visit Isaac.
And Isaac's reaction is pretty blunt, right? Understandably so.
Yeah, he's pointed. He asks, basically, why are you here? This doesn't look friendly. You kicked me out before. It's a fair question given their history.
And Abimelech's reply is fascinating. What does he say?
Abimelech's reply reveals the pragmatism of the flesh, really. He says, we can plainly see that the Lord is with you. So we decided we should have a treaty, a covenant between us. Swear that you will not harm us, just as we did not harm you. And then this bit of revisionist history. We've always treated you well, and we sent you away from us in peace, and now look how the Lord has blessed you.
Always treated him well. They envied him and asked him to leave because he was too powerful.
Exactly. It's almost humorous. But it illustrates a profound political and governmental reflection, how godly living influences secular power. Righteousness and prosperity in an individual or nation blessed by God can attract attention and often lead to favor, but also, ironically, envy and attack. And sometimes it leads to pragmatic alliances from those who recognize the blessing, even if they don't understand the source.
And this sets up another layer of allegory, doesn't it? Abimelech, representing the flesh, now wants a covenant with Isaac, who represents the spirit.
Absolutely. The flesh, being inherently selfish and pragmatic, recognizes God's undeniable blessing on Isaac. They saw where Isaac went, that the blessing happened where he was. The tangible evidence of God's favor was just too obvious to ignore.
So the flesh wants peace, but not for the right reasons.
Exactly. It wants peace not out of genuine love for God, not out of a desire for spiritual transformation, but because it wants to continue to live good and benefit from God's blessings indirectly. It's self-serving. This is a critical warning for us today. Always watch out when the flesh is trying to make a covenant. It wants to co-opt the blessing, to associate with the spiritual, but not necessarily to genuinely follow God or embrace his ways. It seeks to coexist for its own gain.
But Isaac agrees to the treaty.
He does. The resolution shows Isaac preparing a feast, and they exchange solemn oaths of non-aggression, parting in peace. It shows God's sovereignty even in these complex human spiritual interactions. Even as the flesh tries to maneuver, God's purposes prevail, and he can even use the schemes of others to bring about his peace.
And then another well is found.
Yes. On that very day, as if to seal this new, peaceful phase, Isaac's servants find water in a newly dug well. Isaac names it Oath, Sheba, which gives the city its enduring name, Beersheba, meaning well of the oath. It's a fresh, new source of life following this new covenant of peace.
Okay, the chapter seems to be wrapping up peacefully, but then there's this concluding note that feels abrupt but important. Esau's marriages.
Right. It seems like a sudden shift, but it's vital for understanding the unfolding narrative and the continuation of the covenant line. Esau, Isaac's son, at age 40, marries 2 Hittite women, Judith and Basemath.
And this causes problems.
Big problems. The text says these marriages made life miserable and were a grief of mind and spirit for Isaac and Rebekah. This isn't just about parents disapproving of who their son married. It highlights the significant challenges of intermarriage with those outside the covenant community, especially with groups like the Hittites who worshiped different gods and had very different cultural practices.
So it was about differing values, lifestyles.
Yes, profound grief due to differing lifestyles and values. It starkly contrasts with Abraham's careful, divinely guided selection of Rebekah for Isaac from his own people, emphasizing the paramount importance of spiritual lineage over superficial attraction or mere convenience.
And Esau's choice, it links back to the flesh theme again.
Exactly. Esau's choice to marry based on what his flesh sees, what his flesh likes, his own desires and immediate preferences, serves as another clear illustration of yielding to the flesh. Very similar to the Philistine archetype we discussed. He's choosing partners based on worldly criteria, likely leading him away from his spiritual heritage.
It's a sobering end to the chapter.
It is. For us today, it prompts profound reflection on personal choices, especially in relationships, that might compromise one's spiritual heritage or impact family values long term. It stresses the enduring importance of spiritual discernment over physical senses and appetites in decisions that affect our spiritual journey and legacy. It's a reminder that our choices have consequences that ripple through generations.
So, as we wrap up this incredibly detailed deep dive into Genesis 26, what are the enduring lessons for us, the modern deep divers, as we navigate our own lives facing similar kinds of challenges?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's about trusting in God's promises amidst adversity. Like Isaac during that famine and all the conflict, we are called to rely on God's promises in difficult times, whether that's economic hardship, personal crises, global uncertainty, or just the daily frustrations. God's unwavering faithfulness prevails even when we mess up. He never left Isaac, and he never leaves us. It's an active, present trust.
Okay, trust. What else?
Second, the imperative of obedience and integrity. Isaac's deception is such a powerful cautionary tale, isn't it? Emphasizing the critical importance of honesty in all our relationships, even when we feel vulnerable or scared. His repetition of Abraham's sin reminds us of those often unseen generational cycles of mistakes that can run in families, but also powerfully of God's grace protecting us even then. We absolutely must confront fear head-on and avoid that self-preservation at all costs mentality, because it often leads to greater complications and spiritual compromises.
That's huge. Third point.
Third, Genesis 26 gives us a profound blueprint for mastering conflict resolution and peacemaking. Isaac's courageous passivity, that strategic choice to move and redig wells rather than just retaliate or get stuck in endless conflict models. True meekness, which isn't weakness, it's strength under control.
How does that apply today?
Directly to resolving disputes in our families, workplaces, communities. Prioritizing peace over always asserting our rights or needing to win every argument, and Isaac's eventual forgiveness of Abimelech, despite the past abuses and that manipulative approach, exemplifies true forgiveness that paves the way for real peace.
Okay, trust, integrity, peacemaking. Number 4.
Fourth, and this is so critical for spiritual vitality, it's about prioritizing spiritual sustenance and growth. Digging wells, that metaphor represents continuously seeking spiritual nourishment from God's word through consistent, fervent prayer and an active fellowship with other believers. These aren't optional extras. They are essential for our spiritual life, for cleansing, for growth.
Keep digging.
Keep digging. Believers must persistently dig for water, seeking God's resources despite the world, the flesh, and the devil constantly trying to block them, fill them in. This isn't a one-time thing. It's a continuous daily pursuit. And acknowledging God's hand, like Isaac did naming Rehoboth, fosters humility and gratitude, rightly attributing success and peace to divine grace, not just our own cleverness or effort.
And the final takeaway?
Finally, Genesis 26 is a profound, almost instructional lesson in confronting the flesh and unseen spiritual battles. The Philistines consistently represent the flesh. Envious, selfish, wanting its own way. And remember, the flesh will recognize when the spirit's being blessed, and the flesh will join in with the spirit, not because the flesh loves God, not because it's changed, but for what God's blessings can provide for itself. It's a pragmatic alliance, not a holy one.
Should we discern?
Very discerning. The famine, the Philistine opposition, these can be seen as satanic attempts to disrupt Isaac's faith and the messianic line, with the stopped-up wells symbolizing spiritual obstruction, attempts to cut off the life source. But God's appearances and his ultimate sovereignty overcome these schemes, proving his power. For us, this highlights that our flesh has to what? Die daily to be fully raised new in Christ, but until glory, it remains a constant, often subtle force within us, a battle we must continually fight with God's help. This chapter provides a clearer view of you, a clearer understanding of our own internal struggles, and helps us understand why people act a certain way, the pervasive influence of sin in the flesh. It's a constant battle, but God's protection and provision are always there, guiding us to victory.
As you reflect on Isaac's journey then, consider the profound contrast between his very human fear and God's unwavering, almost tenacious faithfulness. How often do we, like Isaac, try to control outcomes through our own flawed strategies, through fear-driven decisions, only to discover that God's promised provision and protection were already at play, guiding us eventually to a place of room enough, despite all the battles? What wells in your own life? What sources of spiritual nourishment? What areas of inherited blessing might need some redigging right now to access God's living water today, especially if the world's been trying to fill them in? Keep digging, deep divers, and we'll see you next time.